Hey everybody, I'm McKenty, the head of music and audio here on CreativeLive. If you're new to CreativeLive, we are the world's leading classroom for online classroom for creative professionals. We have classes in everything from songwriting to engineering, mixing, mastering, everything else that goes into the craft and art and science of making music. Today we have a conversation with a couple of our friends from Recording Magazine. We've got a technical consulting editor, Paul Vnuk, who I'm told specialty is microphones, and of course Mike Metlay, the editor-in-chief, who you may have seen before here on CreativeLive. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Finn, for having us.
Great to be here.
Cool. Well, tell us a little bit about why we're here today, Paul. You've got some stuff going on in the October issue of the magazine, which we're going to kind of delve into a little bit. Can you tell everyone what to expect from that?
Actually, Mike can better. October was that the miking issue?
That is our mic locker issue.
That is our mic.
Maximize your mic locker. And we are going to be talking about all kinds of interesting stuff in the October issue. You know, today we can touch base on pretty much anything having to do with microphones.
Cool. Well, Paul and I are going to have a little conversation about microphones. I'll ask him some questions, and he'll drop some knowledge. If you would like to ask your own question of Paul, head over to the upper right side of this page and click on the chat button up there, type your question in, and I will ask it on your behalf. Well, Paul, microphones, I think, are something that are you know, our best friend and our worst enemy when we're in the studio. You know, we all drool over the same expensive gear that none of us can afford and very few of us have access to. Can you talk a little bit about the role of microphones? I mean, it seems obvious, but talk a little bit about how important it is to have the right mic locker, whether you're in a studio at home or a professional studio.
Yeah, well, I think you really hit the nail on the head with the right mic locker, because everybody, you know, if you go to a lot of the popular gear forums, everybody talks a lot about you know, kind of the big 3 or 4. I used to remember years ago, if you didn't have a U47 or a, you know, U87, you know, you shouldn't be recording. And you know, since microphones have gotten a lot more cost effective and a lot of modern technology has helped with that, the doors have kind of been blown wide open, and there's so many choices out there now. You know, I would probably say I have a microphone addiction. You know, it's like trying fine wines. You know, all of them are good. All of them are okay. Some of them are great. Some of them are really well suited for every source. Some of them are really, really specific one-trick ponies, but what a trick, you know. And they really are. I've seen discussions as to what's more important, a cheap microphone and a good mic pre, or a great microphone and a cheap mic pre. Which is kind of a chicken and the egg thing, because I've had great results with both. But really the first step of anything that you need for recording audio is a good microphone. Now, I mean a good microphone, not an expensive microphone, but just a good quality microphone.
Well, maybe let's start by getting your thoughts on a couple, you know, options for mic lockers. So let's say someone is brand new to home recording. You know, they've got their computer, they've picked an interface, and they want to record, you know, kind of a typical rock band, and they've got a budget, say, under $1,000 for microphones. Where would you recommend that they start?
You know, it really, first of all, be realistic with yourself. You know, if you're going to be recording a full drum kit and you have the inputs on your interface, you know, 8 or more inputs, you know, then you're going to want to look at a good drum kit. There's a lot of companies, every company, Audix, Shure, CAD, Audio-Technica, I think they all make a good drum mic package. So you might want to think about that. But stepping back from that, if you're in a position where you've got a 2-input interface, you know, it's kind of pointless to go out and buy a whole drum mic package to record your drums unless you're going to submix them in a mixer. But I would say that it's really best to start with 1 or 2 really good kind of does all well microphones out there, and that depends on your price point. The first one that pops right into my head, I've got, I get the question a lot, hey, I've got $200 to spend or less. What's a good beginner microphone? And I think that my top three maybe right now are probably Rode has a new version of the NT1. And there was the NT-1, the NT1A, and I think the current one is just the NT1. It's about $250. It's a fantastic kind of does-all microphone. I really like SE Electronics makes the X1, which is also a very good, well-rounded beginner mic. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, it was either coming up in the October issue or it was previously in the September issue, but there's a brand new company called Roswell.
Roswell Pro Audio. And their mic was actually featured in the September issue of Recording. It's the Mini K47, which is a microphone that uses a fairly accurate reproduction of the original K47 capsule that Neumann made famous 50, 60 years ago. It's a dynamite little microphone, very versatile, and it comes in at about $249, I think.
Yeah, that one blew me away. I reviewed a pair of them, and I can honestly say that's a mic that, I have more expensive mics in my collection, and I review more expensive mics regularly. So I'm not in need of more mics, and that's a mic that I would keep on hand and continue to use. They're really nice and compact and small. They fit in a lot of spaces, and it pretty much sounded great on acoustic guitar, vocals, rock, like baby grand piano, playing kind of a rock style. So a really great well-rounder from a new company that probably nobody's heard of yet, because I think they sell direct. And the secret to that company is you might see on the forums, a lot of people will buy inexpensive microphones and then have them modified. They'll upgrade capsules or capacitors or things, and this company's kind of already done the work for you. So this is a modified Chinese microphone that is fantastic.
That's an interesting concept. Well, one mic that pretty much everybody needs is a good vocal mic, or as we said before, the right vocal mic. Can you talk about a few options for that?
Again, all three that I just mentioned will work great on vocals. I can jump the gun a little bit with a review that's coming up, and it's a little bit more expensive. I think it's around the $700 mark, but again, it's a really good, well-rounded mic. And that's AKG. Everybody's heard of the C414, I think, which is a really, I actually have that here. It's a really popular classic mic that's existed for close to 35, 40 years in various forms. AKG has just come out with a lesser version that uses the same capsule as the C414 XLS, I believe, and it's called the 314. And this is a multi-pattern. It's got 4 patterns. Microphone audio. Or AKG also has the 214, which was reviewed a couple of years ago, about 4 years ago. Darwin Gross reviewed it, and that's a single cardioid pattern. And I was really blown away by this on vocals. I just cut an album that's kind of a classic rock, Ryan Adams, Lenny Kravitz sort of record, and I think it pretty much made the cut on a couple of the female lead vocals. We used it on all of the backing vocals. And the only reason we didn't use it on more lead vocals is because the rest of the lead vocals were already finished. So that's a really good well-rounder. One of my favorite mics that I've recommended for years as a great starting point is Shure makes the KSM series. They have a mic called the KSM44. Now it's the KSM44A. Again, that's about $1,000, so you're really kind of pushing the edge of your if you're trying to stay in 1,000 or under. But that's a great well-rounder. It's not very bright, so you can do a lot with it for vocals. That's a vocal go-to mic. Another mic that I love on vocals that's really kind of very versatile is Lawton Audio makes the Atlantis, which has voicing switches, so you can change it from kind of an intimate vocal to a really more big, wide, open sound, multi-pattern. Again, that's a mic that I leave up kind of in the studio, and it'll handle vocals, drum overheads, guitars.
Well, one of the things we said we were going to talk about is not only how to choose microphones, but how to use them. And that's one part that I think people maybe don't talk about as much as they should. Can you talk a little bit about how to get how to get the most out of a microphone you have that may not be the best thing in the world, but really learning how to use it, knowing it intimately, and how to really milk it for everything you can?
Yeah, I think, the biggest thing that, it sounds simple to think about, but I don't think we do enough with it is microphone placement. And you'll read article after article that'll tell you what angle to put a mic at or where to place it, how far to have it away. And I would say it's great to have those rules, those starting points, but what you really want to do is play with placement. And I think really, as simple as that sounds, we forget about it quickly because that's how you get the most out of a microphone. This microphone's going to sound way different if it's here than if it's over here. And so, all microphones have a varying degree of what's known as proximity effect, which I don't know if you can hear it online, but if I get closer to this microphone, it gets deeper on my voice and you get that hello radio sound. And then if you move away, it gets a little bit thinner. So you really need to play with how close your microphone is to a source. Some microphones are fantastic being right up against a guitar or a person's voice. Other ones are going to be so boomy, it's going to be annoying, and you're going to be EQing that out later, so you want to pull it back. I do a lot of walking around the studio with the microphone. If I have a guitar cabinet up, I'll walk around and just kind of slowly move it. And when I hear that sound, I'll stop and tweak from there. And that's really what I do. I'm a big fan of just kind of walking around and listening with the mic in a pair, wearing headphones and then, kind of moving, stop. With vocalists, I'll have them take a step back or a step forward. The great thing with vocalists is almost every mic you're going to use some sort of a pop filter, little round, either metal mesh or a nylon pop filter. And you can use that as your thing for positioning. You can start with the mic and do like a hand distance and put the pop filter on the other side. And that'll be kind of where you're going to get that. You can also, tilting a mic or angling it will help with some plosives, some sound issues.
Well, let me ask you kind of the inverse of that question. We always tell people, beware of gear acquisition syndrome, make the most out of what you have, but there is a time in which you genuinely should upgrade. How do you know when you're at that point with microphones?
The easy thing would be, well, the first advice I got from a good friend of mine who's an audio engineer, Giles Reeves, mentioned years ago in an interview that I was doing that one of the biggest mistakes is people go out and they pull out the credit card and they buy too much gear. So they'll buy 6 microphones and 3 compressors, and then they try to learn it all in a week or a month. And I think the best thing that helped me is I started out, when I started recording, it was at a time when the cheap Chinese and import condensers were just hitting the market. So, for me at one time, $100 microphone was, wow, I can't believe I'm buying a $100 microphone. I started with a 57 and a 58, like most people, Shure SM57. And then when I moved to my first condenser, even though it was a $100 inexpensive Asian microphone, I was like, wow, and it opened up all these worlds of sound that I wasn't capturing with these handheld dynamics. And then eventually I used that for a year. And when I couldn't get any more out of it, then I went to a $300 mic, and then I heard a $1,000 mic. And every time there's a little bit of a wow factor. But once you get past that, I think the best thing is move on to a new piece of gear when you can't do everything you want with the gear that you have already. So it's kind of like if you're a guitar player, you're gonna play the heck out of your beginner electric guitar, and when it's not giving you the sound you want or the feel you want, you're going to move up. So I'd say 1, when you need to, but 2, when you can. I think the best thing to do is buy the best quality gear you can afford at any level. So if you have $100, get the best sounding $100 mic you can, and hopefully get one that you can maybe keep or even trade in later, and then get a $200 mic and then a $300 mic or whatever.
I should interject here that in the October issue of Recording, which is out right now, I think in its digital format, and will be getting to subscribers very soon, and will be on newsstands in about 3 weeks, we will have an article actually on an appropriate upgrade path for building your mic locker that was written by Sven-Erik Seholm. Sven is a fantastic guy, and I'm hoping to get him on this lecture series at some point. He runs a studio in San Diego. He's a singer-songwriter, sort of a great all-around performer and recording engineer, and he wrote a really beautiful article on how to start, where to start, and how to move up, and he makes a lot of really good suggestions in there, way more than we could fit in one webinar. So
yeah, that's
keep your eyes open
idea
for that one.
I love that. I'll definitely have to check that out. Well, on the topic of using microphones, I'm going to ask a really stupid question because I'm not afraid to be that guy. But I have a hard time sometimes hearing phase issues. People that are more experienced than I am will listen to my recordings and be like, dude, you got some phase problems here, here, and here. And I have a hard time hearing it. Can you give people some guidelines on how to spot phase issues and how to fix them?
What I do is I tend to work primarily when I start recording in mono, which sounds simplistic, but if you're using 2 microphones, phase issues occur most often when you have 2 microphones and they start to occupy the same space, and when you kind of break the plane, basically the sound patterns kind of overlap each other, and you start to get these weird phase issues. And that, it's actually slightly like listening to a guitar phaser pedal. It'll be this sound, and sound will cut out a little bit. And so I tend to work a lot in mono, which if you hear it most with cymbals and high frequency sources. You'll hear it a lot on electric guitar cabinets, where most people will use 2 microphones on a guitar cabinet. Or recently, I fought phase issues hard because I was recording a acoustic guitar player who she insisted on singing and playing her acoustic at the same time. So I've got 2 microphones, one up on her voice and another one down on the guitar. And I had to work a lot to really make sure that those mics were perfectly in phase. And so I wasn't getting this weird kind of sound in various parts. But when you work in mono, things will go away when they're out of phase. And or actually, it's the opposite. When things are perfectly in phase, usually you can flip the phase and null them. Again, I don't know if I'm getting too far advanced or
no, not
technical.
at all.
So anyway, there's usually things that people will perfectly record out of phase or play with the phase on that snare drum. So you'll have one microphone going straight on the snare drum, and the underside either going out of phase or on phase, and you'll actually use the phase flip, the polarity flip, on your mic pre or your mixer to flip the phase of one of them, and you'll kind of hear the difference in the sound. Usually it'll kind of sometimes it'll open up if that's what you want, or you can even shut it down a little bit. And the same thing happens. The one place to not be afraid of phase at all is on electric guitar cabinets. And a lot of times you'll do the same thing. You'll have one mic facing the cabinet off axis on the speaker and the other one straight on. And as you move the mics around, the phase will actually act as an equalizer. And so it will change the tone of what you're recording, and it'll either get thinner and more distant, or you can carve out a little bit of low end and just get these really cool guitar sounds. But again, usually the best thing for me for phase is always double checking your stuff and your mix is in mono at some point. And if you go to mono and suddenly you hear things sound weird, that's the best way of putting it. It just doesn't sound pleasant. It sounds weird. And you'll get this kind of sound, and that's the best way to play with phase. And some ways I kind of, if I'm not hearing it, it's not there. I'm not worried about it. And
because there's sort of there's plenty of recordings that probably do have phase issues that aren't scientifically perfect but sound pleasant.
No, and I like I said, that guitar recording that I did with the female singer and the acoustic guitar, that was it. I mean, this was just a little simple folk record where there was no drums, no other instruments added. And I thought everything sounded great. And I brought it to a mastering engineer's studio, and he's listening and he's listening. And he's like, dude, your stuff's out of phase. And I didn't know that till afterwards. It was too late. I couldn't fix it. A phase tool didn't fix it. So, we had to muddle through the best we could. So even I didn't notice it. While we were recording, I thought everything sounded fine in the mix. And
it makes me feel a little bit better. If you can get caught by phase, then maybe I don't suck as bad as I thought.
No, I mean, phase really messes with a lot of people making drum recordings, but I've also seen the opposite. I've seen people chase their tail, where they'll actually go into their DAW and their digital audio workstation, and they will take. So if you've ever looked in your DAW at the wave, you see the sine wave, and you can actually line things up so everything's perfectly in phase. And so I've watched people take drum recordings where they make sure that the drum overheads are perfectly in phase with the kick by moving the tracks around. And I can't stand that, because you're kind of altering the time differential of the hits, and it just doesn't sound natural. So I guess the best thing is I would get it right first, or get it sounding the way you want it sounding, and not have to try to fix it in your DAW, and not try to make it a matter of principle either. Because I've seen people, I have to move things and correct the phase. Well, if you're not hearing it and it's not bothering you, don't do it just because it's a process that you think you have to achieve now with the digital world.
Yeah, you don't want to mix with your eyes. You want to mix with your ears. And things can be beautifully aligned on a DAW screen and not sound as good as they did before you started messing with things.
If only it was that easy.
Yeah. I'd like to add two very quick points. One of them is, if you want a very crude example of what phase mismatch sounds like, the phaser and the flanger are actually good guitar effects that, they do it deliberately. But if you put a tiny amount of phaser or flanger on a track and you listen to the whooshing sound or the resonances that you get, the way a flanger actually works is by deliberately creating these time delay problems. And a phaser uses all-pass filters with their phase moving against one another. So they're sort of, when you want to do this deliberately, but if you have that sort of whooshing or whistling sound in your head, that's what you're listening for, the hollowness when you do these. I also want to put in a quick plug for an absolutely phenomenal type of product. It's not something the beginner would have, but it's a nice thing to add later especially if you're doing a lot of two-microphone recording, which is the phase adjustment tool. There are actually boxes out there which let you dial in the phase of one microphone versus another without having to.
Well, I guess we don't get to find out the secret.
Well, we
lost you there for a second.
I'm back.
Nope.
Hello. I'm back.
Well, it sounds like Mike's having some technical problems.
Basically what he's talking about is there's a couple companies, the two that come to mind, Radial and out of Canada, and then Little Labs, both make a phase alignment boxes that basically you plug it into your system, and it will allow you to actually alter the phase and the timing delay of your microphone sources, so you can adjust them while you're recording, or even afterwards. You can take each track, the separate mic track, run them through these boxes, and just slowly shift. There's even Universal Audio, I think, makes a plugin that does that. They actually make a plugin of the Little Labs phase alignment tool that'll do that, so you can do that after the fact. And actually, they're fun tools to play with. You can even, because you can kind of hear what they do.
Yeah, Mike, I think you are back.
Okay, just to add, Paul actually nailed it. The Radial tool is called the Phaser, P-H-A-Z-E-R, and they put a lot of phaser technology into a lot of their interfaces and DIs. but you can also get it as a unit on its own. And then the Little Labs device, which was the first one on the market, is the IBP, the in-between phase. And those are handy tools to have in your box. They don't replace good mic placement, but they're often a good supplement.
Paul, we have a question for you, which is, as someone who has had access to a lot of high-end stuff, what is the real difference between affordable gear and the high-end stuff we all drool over?
That is a loaded question. I usually tell people it's ease of use. I've had, you know, in a way, to backtrack, it was great when I had lesser expensive gear and I had to work harder because I learned more. But the minute I put up a high-end microphone, like the first time I heard, you know, Neumann just did a reissue of the U47 FET. And the first time I heard that on trumpet and kick drum and bass cabinet, my brain went, oh, that's the sound. That's the sound that I've heard before. And basically this was just microphone, mic pre converter. And I didn't have to put an EQ in there. I didn't have to, you know, mess around with the placement and move it around. And so a lot of it becomes, actually, it's two things. One is longevity of the gear. I mean, it's no secret that a lot of less expensive gear is not going to last as long. There's going to, you know, it could break. It's made with lesser metals or plastics. So there's a little bit of a build quality issue. But really, it's the ease of putting up this microphone and being able to get on with just capturing the source and not having to mess around with placement as much in some cases. You know, the sad thing about the gear myth is you find that usually a $200 microphone is typically twice as good as a $100 microphone, and maybe a $1,000 microphone is twice as good as a $600 microphone. But once you break that $1,000 barrier, now you're suddenly getting into smaller percentages. So I've reviewed a lot of, I've been lucky enough to play with a couple $4,000 and $5,000 microphones. They're usually not twice as good as a $2,500 microphone or a $1,000 microphone. They're maybe 10% better or 15% better. And I would say, yes, I love that 10% or that 15% that they add. I've had other people in my studio go, yeah, I don't really hear it, you know, and that's okay. You know, I also have recently, and I'm not going to name names, but recently I sold one of my $5,000 microphones because I had a $3,000. Yeah, I know I'm talking huge numbers, which sounds really arrogant. It's not meant to sound arrogant.
Sold my Ferrari for 2 Lamborghinis.
Yeah, no, I know. As I say it, it's like, that just sounds so. I was lucky enough after one of my jobs to save up and buy what actually, this is maybe a good object lesson, but I bought what I thought was my holy grail microphone. It was $5,000. I sold a ton of gear to get it. It was like a 6 months, a year's worth of jobs to get this thing, only to realize that, you know, a $2,000 microphone was for me just as good. And I sold the $5,000 microphone, and unfortunately I didn't get $5,000 for it when I sold it used. So if I would have waited, you know, I would have been happy with this $2,000 microphone. And like I said, you know, I use a lot less expensive gear as well, you know. But you know, so I know that, you know, you've probably heard those answers before, but that's really what I find is there's a one is just what you hear or what the microphone hears and picks up will be easier to capture with more expensive gear. I would say with some of the classics, I've learned the hard way as much as I've tried to fight it, you know, finding alternatives to a U87 or alternatives to some of the expensive models of yesteryear. There's a reason why they are the classics they are. You hear them and your ears go, oh, yeah, that's the sound that I've heard on this album forever, and I've been trying to get it and trying to get it. There it is. So that's part of the truth, unfortunately. But then how important is capturing that sound? I don't own a U87. I actually use a Bronner Phantom instead, which is less expensive than a U87, and I like it better just for me. Other people might not. They don't sound all that similar, but it does the same tasks in my studio, and for me, it's better.
Sure. The best mic for your studio is the one that is working for your songs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, plenty of recordings that we all love were made with, you know, gear that is objectively terrible, but yet the recordings sound great. Cool. Well, we got to wrap it up, but thanks to both of you for joining us. Make sure you check out the October issue of Recording Magazine, out now in digital, and will soon be out in print, Mike?
Yes. We're expecting our initial copies of the magazine any day now. Subscribers should get them soon after that. And in the last week of September, it will be on the stands. We've got a great slate of reviews in there, some really cool articles on mic placement. If you're trying to get started building a mic locker, or you want some cool tricks and you already know the basics, there's going to be something in there that I think you'll really dig. Finn, once again, I'd like to thank you for making Paul and me welcome. We're looking forward to doing this again sometime. I'm not sure what our next topic will be or who our next guest speaker will be, but in the meantime, I'd like to thank the CreativeLive audience for listening in, following along. I'd like to thank Paul for sort of jumping in, you know, into the pool feet first for this first time, and check us out at www.recordingmag.com.
All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
All right.